The council chamber floated in the void between stars. A massive station where representatives from 47 species gathered to decide the fate of civilizations. Today, the air carried tension that made even the most experienced diplomats uncomfortable. Ambassador Taiwan stood at the center of the circular room, his dark suit crisped despite 3 days without sleep. Around him, alien beings of every shape and size watched from their elevated platforms. "Honorable members," Taiwan said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion pulling at his bones, "the Kravax Empire has declared war on Earth. Their invasion fleet launched 6 days ago. 400 warships carrying enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. They will reach our system in 72 hours. We request military assistance under Article 7 of the Mutual Defense Treaty." A ripple of movement passed through the chamber. The council leader, a crystalline being named Velthor, produced sounds that the translator converted to words. "Ambassador, we sympathize with your situation. The Kravax are a known threat. They have conquered 17 systems in the past century. However, your request presents complications." Taiwan felt his jaw tighten. He had expected this response, had prepared arguments for every objection. But hearing the word still sent cold anger through his chest. What complications? The treaty is clear. An unprovoked attack on any member species requires collective defense. Another council member spoke, this one resembling a massive insect covered in blue chitin. "The treaty assumes the threatened species has reasonable defensive capabilities. Earth joined the council only 30 years ago. Your military consists of 89 vessels. The Kravax bring 400. Your technology is generations behind theirs. The mathematics are simple, Ambassador. Earth cannot win this war." "Then help us fight it," Taiwan said, and he let the desperation show now. Let them see a human being fighting for his species' survival. "Send your fleets." The combined forces of the council could crush the Kravax and end their expansion forever. Velthor's crystalline body shifted colors, a sign of discomfort that Taiwan had learned to recognize. "We have reviewed Earth's defensive capabilities. Your ships are adequate for patrol and minor conflicts. Against the Kravax, they are obsolete. Your orbital platforms lack the shielding to survive their weapons. Your ground forces have no experience fighting an off-world enemy. We estimate Earth's complete military collapse within 96 hours of initial contact." "Wrong?" Taiwan said quietly. "I beg your pardon?" Velthor asked. "You're wrong about us. You've analyzed our ships, our weapons, our technology, but you haven't analyzed us. Humanity, you think numbers tell the whole story? But you don't understand what humans are capable of when threatened." A bird-like council member chirped a laugh that the translator rendered as derisive. "Ambassador, we mean no disrespect to your species. But hope and courage cannot stop plasma torpedoes. The Kravax have destroyed civilizations far older and more advanced than yours. They show no mercy. They take no prisoners. Once they commit to an invasion, they see it through to extermination." Taiwan looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes, compound lenses, sensory organs he couldn't even name. He saw pity in all of them. They had already mourned humanity. In their minds, Earth was a tomb waiting to be filled. "I have one request," Taiwan said. "If you won't help us fight, at least bear witness. Open the council observation channels. Let the galaxy watch. When we're gone, let there be a record that we stood against the darkness. Let our end mean something." The council members communicated in their various ways, chaos of sounds and lights and pheromones that the translation system couldn't fully capture. Finally, Velthor spoke. "This request we can grant. The observation channels will broadcast your defense. We will ensure the galaxy remembers Earth's final stand. We are truly sorry, Ambassador. Your species showed great promise." Taiwan wanted to scream at them, wanted to curse their cowardice, their certainty, their willingness to let 4 billion humans die rather than risk their own forces. But he swallowed the rage and bowed his head. "Thank you for that mercy, at least. I will return to Earth now. We have preparations to make." As he walked toward the transport pad, Velthor called out to him. "Ambassador, one question. Why do humans resist?" The Kravax will show no mercy whether you fight or surrender. Why choose death in battle over quick annihilation? Taewon stopped. He turned back to face the council one final time. Because we're human. Because we'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees. Because maybe, just maybe, you're wrong about the mathematics. And because if we're going to die, we're taking as many of those bastards with us as we can. He stepped onto the transport pad and vanished in a flash of light, leaving the council chamber in uncomfortable silence. 8 light-years away, the Kravax invasion fleet cut through empty space like a blade. Their ships were sleek instruments of destruction, hulls black as the void, weapons capable of shattering moons. The fleet commander, a veteran of 12 successful invasions, reviewed the tactical data on the primitive species they were about to crush. The humans had 89 military vessels. Laughable. Their orbital platforms were fixed positions, easy targets. Their ground forces used kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. The Kravax had fought and defeated enemies with gravitic weapons and quantum disruption fields. This wouldn't even qualify as a real battle. It would be an extermination, pure and simple. The commander opened a channel to his ship captains. All vessels, maintain attack formation. We enter the human system in 72 hours. Expect minimal resistance. Target priority is orbital infrastructure, then major population centers. We will teach the galaxy what happens to species who refuse to submit to the Empire. We will make Earth a monument to Kravax superiority. 400 ships adjusted their course, locked onto the star humanity called Sol. In 3 days, they would reach Earth. In 4 days, the commander believed, Earth would no longer exist as anything but radioactive dust. The galaxy watched through the council observation channels, waiting for the massacre to begin. Billions of beings tuned in to watch humanity's final hours. Scholars prepared obituaries for the species. Historians documented what little they knew of human culture, preserving it before the Kravax erased every trace. No one expected what was about to happen. No one could have predicted it. Because the galaxy had made one critical mistake in their analysis of humanity. They had looked at human technology and military hardware, but they had never looked at human history. They had never studied what humans did to each other before they reached the stars. They had never counted the wars, the strategies, the terrible lessons learned over 10,000 years of organized violence. The Kravax were about to receive an education. The galaxy was about to learn a truth that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. An Ambassador Taewon, racing back to Earth aboard the fastest ship humanity possessed, allowed himself one grim smile. Let them watch, he thought. Let them all watch. The Kravax fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, their black ships spreading into attack formation like a predator's claws. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched through the council observation channels. They expected to witness the final hours of humanity. They got something very different. Admiral Hyansik stood on the bridge of the battleship Indomitable. Watching the sensor displays light up with enemy contacts, 400 red dots appeared on the tactical screen, each one representing a Kravax warship capable of destroying a city with a single volley. Behind him, his crew worked in practiced silence, their movements efficient and calm despite the death approaching them. All ships report ready, Admiral, said his tactical officer, a young woman named Commander Yena, whose steady voice betrayed none of the fear she must have felt. Hyansik nodded. Signal the fleet. Execute defensive pattern Delta 7. All orbital platforms to maximum alert. And someone get me a direct line to ground command. General Daehyun needs to know his timetable just got shorter. The Kravax fleet accelerated toward Earth's outer defensive perimeter, their weapons charging to full power. The Council observers recorded every moment, their analysis programs predicting the battle's outcome. Humanity had 18 ships against 400. The orbital platforms were outdated and immobile. The prediction algorithms gave humanity a 0% chance of survival. The first engagement began near Mars orbit. Human patrol ships opened fire at maximum range, their missiles streaking toward the Kravax formation. The Kryvax point defense systems swatted the missiles aside like annoying insects. Return fire lanced out, blue-white beams of concentrated plasma that cut through space at relativistic speeds. 3 human destroyers vanished in blooms of fire, their hulls vaporized before their crews could even scream. Velthor watched from the council chamber, crystalline body dimming with sorrow. It begins as we predicted. The humans cannot stand against such firepower. They should surrender now, spare themselves the suffering. But the humans didn't surrender. Their ships fell back in what appeared to be a panicked retreat, breaking formation and scattering toward the inner system. The Kryvax fleet pursued, sensing blood in the water. Their commander issued orders to press the attack, to run down the fleeing humans and destroy them before they could. Regroup. That's when everything changed. The human ships weren't retreating. They were leading the Kryvax directly into a debris field created from the destroyed orbital platforms. Thousands of pieces of wreckage floated in seemingly random patterns. The Kryvax sensors detected them, but dismissed them as harmless. Destroyed human equipment couldn't hurt anyone. Then the mines detonated. The debris field erupted in a chain reaction of explosions, each piece of wreckage actually a disguised explosive device. Nuclear fire blossomed across hundreds of kilometers of space. The Kryvax formation flew directly into the inferno. Ships closest to the blasts simply ceased to exist, atomized by temperatures matching a star's core. Others tumbled out of the fireballs with hulls melted and systems failing. The council chamber erupted in shocked chatter. Velthar's body flashed colors never seen before. Impossible. The wreckage was analyzed. There were no weapon signatures, no power readings. On Earth, a technician named Jihan smiled at his monitor. He had spent 3 weeks personally installing the mines, disguising their signatures to match ordinary debris. The Kryvax had scanned them and seen exactly what Jihan wanted them to see. Garbage. 40-7. Its Kryvax ships were destroyed in the initial detonation. Another dozen were crippled and drifting. The fleet's perfect formation shattered into chaos as captains maneuvered to avoid collisions with damaged vessels. And in that moment of confusion, the real human fleet attacked. They came from behind Earth's moon, where they had been hiding in its gravitational shadow. Using the moon's mass to mask their heat signatures and energy emissions, 86 human warships appeared seemingly from nowhere. Their weapons already firing before the Kryvax could react. It wasn't the technology that shocked the council observers. It was the tactics. The human fleet split into 3 formations, each attacking from a different vector, creating crossfire zones where the Kryvax couldn't maneuver without exposing their flanks. They used the debris field as cover, darting between explosions, firing and withdrawing before return fire could lock on. Admiral Hyansik watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Target their command ships first. I want their fleet coordination disrupted. And signal the fighter squadrons. Tell them it's time to earn their pay. Lieutenant Ji Woo sat in the cockpit of her fighter, feeling the familiar pre-combat adrenaline surge through her veins. She had flown combat missions before, back when humans fought each other over resources and ideologies. She knew what it felt like to face death in the black. But this was different. This was for the survival of her entire species. Red Squadron, on my mark, she said over the comm channel. Execute maneuver Broken Arrow. And remember, your families are watching. Make them proud. Her squadron dove toward a Kryvax carrier, 12 small fighters against a ship the size of a small city. The carrier's point defense systems tracked them, firing streams of energy that turned to fighters into expanding clouds of gas and metal. 10 fighters remained. They accelerated to maximum velocity, pushing their engines past safe limits. The council observers couldn't understand what they were seeing. The human fighters were flying directly at the carrier on a collision course. Suicide attacks. But humans had never demonstrated this level of fanaticism at the last possible moment. Giwu and her squadron fired their weapons directly into the carrier's hangar bay, then used the fighters themselves as kinetic weapons. 8 pilots ejected at speeds that would crush most species, their specialized suits protecting them as they tumbled through space. 2 pilots didn't eject in time. Their fighters struck the carrier's hull and penetrated deep into its Interior before exploding. The carrier's entire hangar section detonated as fuel and munitions caught fire. Secondary explosions ripped through the ship's spine. Within 30 seconds, the carrier broke in half, both pieces tumbling away as crew members tried desperately to escape. GWU's parachute deployed, slowing her momentum, and a human recovery ship locked onto her beacon. She would be back in the fight within the hour, climbing into a new fighter. The two pilots who hadn't made it out would be mourned, their names carved into a memorial that would stand for 1,000 years. But the carrier was dead, its fighters unable to launch, and the Kravax fleet coordination had just taken another devastating hit. What truly horrified the Council observers was what they saw when Kravax weapons did hit human ships. The destroyer Sol's Fury took a direct hit from a plasma torpedo. Its forward section vaporized. Its main reactor went critical. By all logic, the ship should have exploded or died in space. Instead, emergency bulkheads sealed automatically. Damage control teams rushed into sections exposed to vacuum, wearing suits designed for exactly this scenario. The crew manually rerouted power from the dying reactor to weapons systems. The Sol's Fury continued fighting, its remaining guns firing even as the ship slowly tore itself apart from internal damage. The Council had never seen ships designed this way. Their vessels were efficient, elegant, with centralized systems for maximum performance. Human ships were redundant, compartmentalized, built to keep fighting even after taking catastrophic damage. Every system had a backup. Every backup had a manual override. Human damage control teams trained for scenarios that most species considered impossible to survive. The battle raged for 7 hours. When the Kravax finally broke off and retreated to regroup, they had lost 136 ships. The human fleet had lost 41 vessels. By any military analysis, humanity had just won an impossible victory. Against overwhelming odds, the Kravax commander stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His fleet had been ambushed, outmaneuvered, and outsmarted by a species the Council considered primitive. His invasion timetable was ruined. His casualties were unacceptable. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible thought began to form. Maybe the Council had been wrong about humanity. Maybe they had all been wrong. In the Council chamber, silence reigned. Velthor's body had gone completely transparent, a sign of shock so profound he couldn't maintain his normal coloration. Around the chamber, 47 species tried to process what they had witnessed. Hey, someone explain this, Velthor said finally. Someone explain how they did this. No one had an answer. Not yet. But they would soon learn the truth that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of warfare itself. They would learn that humanity had been fighting wars for longer than most species had been using tools. They would learn that human military doctrine was written in blood across 10,000 years of conflicts. They would learn that the Council had analyzed human technology but completely failed to analyze human nature. And the Kravax were about to learn the most important lesson of all. When you threaten a species that has spent its entire history learning how to kill its own kind, you're not fighting amateurs. You're fighting experts. The Council chamber had never been this crowded. Every species sent additional observers. Military analysts arrived from civilizations that hadn't participated in warfare for centuries. They all wanted answers to the same question. How had humanity defeated a Kravax fleet that should have destroyed them in hours? Ambassador Taiwan stood before the Council again, but this time the atmosphere had changed. The pity was gone, replaced by something between confusion and fear. Velthar's crystalline body pulsed with colors that indicated deep unease. Ambassador Velthar said, "The Council demands an explanation. Your ships were outmatched. Your technology is inferior. Yet you achieved a military victory that our best analysts deemed impossible. Some members suggest you received covert military assistance. Others believe you deployed hidden weapon systems. We must know the truth." Taiwan looked around the chamber. He saw suspicion in some faces, fear in others, and a few expressions he couldn't identify at all. He took a breath and began to speak. He didn't receive help from anyone. You all made that very clear when you refused our request. We didn't have secret weapons. Everything we used, every tactic, every strategy came from one source: human history. You analyzed our technology and thought you understood our military capability, but you never analyzed us. You've never looked at what humans have been doing to each other since we learned to pick up rocks and throw them. A insect-like council member clicked its mandibles in confusion. Explain this reference. What does throwing rocks have to do with defeating a modern fleet? Everything, Taewon said. He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. This is Earth. For our entire recorded history, spanning over 10,000 years, we have been at war. Not occasionally. Not rarely. Almost constantly, we have fought wars over territory, resources, religion, ideology, and sometimes just because we hated each other. We have refined the art of killing each other to a degree that you apparently find incomprehensible. The display showed images from human history, ancient armies clashing with spears and shields, medieval knights charging on horseback, sailing ships firing cannons, trenches filled with soldiers during the Great Wars, tanks rolling across battlefields, jets screaming through the sky. Each image represented centuries of military evolution. Just one century, the 20th century by our calendar, we fought to global wars. The first killed 17 million people. The second killed over 60 million. 60 million of our own species. And those were just the two biggest conflicts. We fought hundreds of smaller wars during the same period. Ophelthera's body flashed a color that indicated horror. This is barbaric. Your species engaged in self-genocide? No, Taewon said sharply. We engaged in survival. Every war taught us lessons. Every conflict refined our tactics. We didn't have the luxury of peaceful development, like most of you. We had to learn how to fight because if we didn't, our enemies would destroy us. And in that crucible of violence, we became very, very good at warfare. The holographic display changed, showing books and documents. This is The Art of War, written by a human military philosopher named Sun Tzu, 2,500 years ago. It contains principles of strategy and tactics that we still teach in our military academies. This is On War, written by Clausewitz, analyzing the nature of conflict itself. This is from von Moltke, teaching flexible strategy and adaptation. We have thousands of texts like these, spanning millennia, all focused on one thing: how to win wars. A bird-like council member chirped a question. But surely such knowledge became obsolete as your technology advanced. Never, Taewon said. The technology changed. The principles didn't. Sun Tzu wrote about deception, surprise, and using the enemy's strengths against them. We used those exact principles when we lured the Kravax fleet into our minefield. Clausewitz wrote about friction in warfare, the chaos and unpredictability of battle. We designed our ships with redundant systems specifically to function despite that friction. Every engagement you witnessed was built on foundations laid down centuries or millennia ago. He gestured, and the display changed again, showing organizational charts. Every human nation maintains military academies where we train our officers, war colleges where we study historical battles and develop new strategies, research institutions dedicated to military technology. We have entire branches of mathematics devoted to game theory and strategic planning. Human children play strategy games from a young age. Our entertainment is filled with military fiction. War for us is not some distant concept. It's woven into the fabric of our culture. A new voice spoke, and the council chamber fell silent. Dr. Yoonji appeared in holographic form, transmitted from Earth. She was an elderly woman, her face lined with age, but her eyes sharp with intelligence. She held the title of Chief Military Historian, a position that existed in every human government. Honorable Council members, Youngji said, I have been asked to provide context for humanity's military capabilities. I will be brief. You asked how we defeated the Kravax. The answer is simple. We prepared. She activated her own display, showing tactical analysis. Humanity achieved faster than light travel 30 years ago. In that time, we studied every conflict in council space. We analyzed the Kravax expansion. We examined their tactics, their ship designs, their patterns of attack. We knew, eventually, someone would target Earth. So we prepared. For 30 years, we built our defenses. Not randomly, but based on detailed analysis of probable threats. We studied the Kravax specifically because they were the most dangerous force we identified. We designed our ships to counter their weapons. We developed tactics to exploit their doctrine. We trained our personnel for this exact scenario. The council members shifted uncomfortably. This level of preparation seemed paranoid to species that hadn't fought serious wars in centuries.
Ow!
But there is something more you must understand, Yunji continued. Something fundamental about human psychology. When you threatened our species, you made a critical error. You assumed we would react like you would, seeking diplomatic solutions, accepting the reality of our inferior position. But humans don't think that way. When threatened with extinction, we don't seek peace. We seek victory. She displayed data from Earth's wars. In our Second World War, we fought against enemies who controlled most of the industrial capacity on our planet. The odds were heavily against the eventual victors. But those nations mobilized every resource, sacrificed millions of lives, and fought for 6 years without surrendering. They won through sheer determination and industrial capacity. We have examples throughout our history of smaller forces defeating larger ones through superior strategy, tactics, and will. We have studied these victories endlessly. The Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 soldiers held off an army of thousands. The Battle of Agincourt, where outnumbered English archers destroyed French cavalry. The Battle of Midway, where intelligence and tactics turned the tide of an entire war. These stories are taught to every human child. They're part of our cultural memory, Velthor interrupted, his voice carrying genuine fear now. Are you saying your entire species is trained for military conflict? In a sense, yes, Yunji said. Not everyone is a soldier, but everyone understands the principles. We learn them through games, stories, education. We absorb them through our culture. And when necessary, we can mobilize our entire population for war. During our global conflicts, we converted civilian factories to military production within months. We rationed food and resources. We accepted casualties that would have broken most species. Because we understand something you apparently don't. She leaned forward, and her voice became hard as steel. We understand that sometimes the only way to ensure peace is to be so dangerous that no one dares attack you. We understand that mercy has its place, but so does ruthless efficiency. And we understand that when someone threatens our families, our homes, our species, there is no line we won't cross to survive. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some members were outraged at humanity's militaristic culture. Others were calculating how this changed the balance of power in council space. A few were already considering alliance proposals. Meanwhile, 8 light-years away, the Kryvax commander reviewed the recordings of the battle, studying every moment of his defeat. His subordinates urged him to withdraw to report back to the Empire that humanity was too dangerous to invade. But the commander's pride wouldn't allow retreat. He had never failed an invasion. He wouldn't start now. He made his decision. The fleet would regroup, reinforce, and attack again. This time, they would bypass the human fleet entirely and land ground forces directly on Earth. The Kryvax had never lost a ground war. Their soldiers were trained from birth for combat. Their weapons were designed to maximize casualties. They would teach humanity what real war looked like. The commander opened a channel to all ships. Prepare for surface invasion. Target coordinates: the Korean Peninsula, Central Europe, and North America. We will break human resistance on the ground where they cannot hide behind their ships and tricks. We will show them what it means to face the Kryvax Empire in true combat. The Crab's landing ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their heat shields glowing red as they burned through the air. The council observers watched with grim certainty. Ground warfare was where the Kravax truly excelled. Their soldiers were genetically enhanced for combat, standing 3 meters tall with natural armor plating and reflexes faster than any unmodified species. They had conquered 17 planets using the same strategy. Overwhelming force applied directly to population centers until resistance collapsed. The first wave landed in Seoul, capital of the Korean Peninsula. 200,000 Kravax soldiers deployed from their ships, weapons ready, expecting to find terrified civilians and hastily organized defenders. Instead, they found empty streets. The city was completely evacuated, not a single person visible in any direction. Buildings stood silent. Vehicles sat abandoned. It was as if the entire population had simply vanished. General Daehyun watched from his command center, buried 50 meters below the city. Around him, dozens of officers monitored screens showing every street, every building, every possible approach route. They had spent 3 weeks preparing Seoul for this moment. The city wasn't empty. It was a weapon. Let them move deeper, Daehyun said calmly. Wait until they're fully committed to the urban center. Then activate Defense Pattern Alpha. The Kravax advanced cautiously at first, but when they encountered no resistance, they began to relax. Their commander ordered the troops to spread out, to secure key buildings and establish forward operating bases. The soldiers moved into the city in formation, their training and discipline evident in every movement. That's when Seoul became a killing zone. The explosions started simultaneously across 12 city blocks. Buildings that the Kravax had identified as command posts detonated, their foundations rigged with charges that brought thousands of tons of concrete and steel crashing down. Entire Kravax platoons disappeared under the rubble. Before the survivors could react, automated weapon systems activated from hidden positions. Machine guns emerged from windows, firing in precise patterns calculated to catch soldiers in crossfire. Artillery shells fell from the sky, targeting concentrations of troops with devastating accuracy. The council observers watched in shock as the empty city revealed itself to be an elaborate trap. Every building had been prepared. Every street had been measured for optimal fire zones. The humans had turned their own capital into a massive ambush site. Sergeant Hanno led his infantry unit through the underground. Tunnels that connected souls. Subway system to specially prepared fighting positions. His soldiers were young, most in their early 20s, but they moved with confidence born from months of training in urban combat. They knew every building, every alley, every possible route the enemy might take. This was their city, their home, and they had spent weeks learning how to defend it. Third Squad, take position in Building 17, Hanyul said into his radio. Wait for the Kravax patrol to pass your position, then hit them from behind. Remember your training. 3-round bursts, aim for their joint areas where the armor is weakest, then displace before they can return fire. His squad acknowledged and moved into position. Hanul watched through a tactical display as the Kravax patrol walked directly into the ambush. His soldiers waited until the perfect moment, then opened fire. The Kravax, expecting resistance from the front, were caught completely off guard by the attack from their rear. 6 soldiers fell before they could even turn around. The survivors tried to return fire, but Hanul's squad had already withdrawn through pre-planned escape routes, disappearing into the urban maze. This pattern repeated across Seoul. Small human units would attack, inflict casualties, and vanish before the Kravax could respond. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't see, in terrain they didn't understand, against tactics they had never encountered. Every street corner was a potential ambush site. Every building could hide human soldiers. The Kravax casualties mounted steadily. They hadn't even seen the bulk of the human defensive forces in Central Europe. The Kravax found themselves facing a different kind of warfare. Colonel Menesio commanded an armored division equipped with tanks and mobile artillery. She didn't try to hold territory. Instead, she used hit-and-run tactics perfected by human militaries over centuries of mechanized warfare. Her tanks would appear suddenly from behind hills or forests, fire a barrage that destroyed Kravax vehicles and supply depots, then retreat before enemy reinforcements could arrive. The Kravax would pursue only to find the terrain itself working against them. Roads that seemed solid would collapse under the weight of their heavy equipment, revealing that humans had undermined them. Bridges would explode as Kravax convoys crossed them. Forests would erupt with ambushes from hidden infantry positions. Target their supply lines, Menesio ordered her commanders. The Kravax are operating far from their ships. They need food, ammunition, fuel. Cut them off and watch them wither. Her strategy worked perfectly. Human forces avoided direct confrontation with the main Kravax army. Instead, they attacked the vulnerable logistics tail that any military force requires. Convoys bringing supplies forward were destroyed by precision artillery strikes. Warehouses storing ammunition were infiltrated and sabotaged by special forces teams. The Kravax soldiers at the front lines found themselves running out of everything they needed to fight. The council observers were seeing something completely outside their experience. Most species fought wars of position, holding territory and defending it. Humans fought wars of maneuver, constantly moving, attacking where the enemy was weak, retreating before the enemy could respond. It was infuriating for the Kravax commanders who couldn't pin down the human forces long enough to bring their superior firepower to bear. What truly shocked the council was how the human civilians behaved. In every previous Kravax invasion, civilian populations either fled in panic or surrendered immediately. Human civilians did neither. The cities were evacuated in organized columns along pre-planned routes to prepared shelters. There was no panic, no chaos. It was clear that humans had drilled for this scenario as many times. More disturbing was what happened in areas the Kravax managed to occupy. Resistance networks activated immediately. Captain Sun Min coordinated guerrilla operations behind enemy lines. Using encrypted communications that the Kravax couldn't intercept, his people weren't soldiers. They were ordinary civilians who had been trained in basic resistance tactics. They sabotaged Kravax equipment, provided intelligence to human military forces, and made it impossible for the Kravax to feel secure anywhere. A Kravax commander would establish a headquarters in a building, only to have it burned down during the night. Supply caches would be poisoned. Officers would disappear during their sleep, taken by resistance fighters who seemed to materialize from nowhere. The Kravax controlled the ground they physically stood on, nothing beyond that. 2 weeks into the ground campaign, the Kravax had captured only 3% of their objectives. Their casualties exceeded 60% of their initial landing force. They had expected to face disorganized defenders with inferior training. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had prepared for this scenario with terrifying thoroughness. The Kravax fleet commander reviewed the reports with growing disbelief. His ground forces were the finest in the Empire, veterans of multiple invasions. They were being systematically destroyed by a species the Council considered primitive. The tactical reports described human soldiers who fought with coordination and discipline that matched or exceeded Kravax training. The humans used combined arms warfare, coordinating infantry, armor, artillery, and air support in ways that maximized their effectiveness. How are they doing this? The commander asked his intelligence officer. Our soldiers are enhanced. Our weapons are superior. Our tactics have succeeded on 17 worlds. What makes Earth different? The intelligence officer brought up a report compiled by their analysts. Sir, we underestimated human military doctrine. They don't fight the way we expect. They've studied our previous invasions and designed countermeasures for all our standard tactics. Their soldiers are trained in combat scenarios that we've never encountered. They've been preparing for this specific battle for decades. The commander stared at the casualty reports. 60% losses with almost no strategic gains. His career was destroyed. The Empire would demand answers. But more than his career, his pride was wounded. The Kravax had never been defeated on the ground before. Never. He made a decision that would change everything. If conventional warfare wasn't working, he would escalate. The Kravax possessed weapons that were banned by most civilized species. Chemical weapons designed to kill indiscriminately. He had never needed to use them before, but humanity had pushed him to this point. Prepare chemical weapons for deployment, he ordered. Target soul. We'll break their resistance with terror if we can't break it with force. The council observers watched in horror as the Kravax loaded their chemical weapons. Velthar immediately opened a channel to the Kravax flagship. Commander, the council prohibits the use of such weapons. You will trigger sanctions and possible military intervention. The galaxy held its breath. Across billions of worlds, people watched the Council observation channels, waiting to see what would happen next. The Kravaks had committed an atrocity, yes, but they still outnumbered the human forces. Military analysts predicted a long, grinding war of annihilation where both sides would suffer catastrophic losses. No one expected what actually happened. The human fleet that had appeared damaged, that had seemed barely functional after the first engagement, suddenly revealed capabilities that shocked every observer. Ships that had been limping through space on minimal power suddenly accelerated to combat speeds. Weapon systems that had appeared destroyed came online, their power signatures blazing on sensors across the system. The truth hit the Council analysts like a physical blow. The humans had been hiding their true strength the entire time. Admiral Hyansik stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching his tactical display transform as his fleet revealed its real capabilities. All ships drop the damaged ship protocols. Full power to all systems. Activate the weapon systems we kept hidden. And someone get me a firing solution on the Kravaks flagship. I want that ship intact. We're going to need their commander alive. Commander Yana worked her console with practiced efficiency, her fingers flying across controls. Sir, all ships reporting full combat readiness. The Kravaks fleet is in complete disarray. They can't understand how our damaged ships are suddenly operational. They forgot the first rule of war, Hyansik said quietly. Never let your enemy know your true capabilities until you're ready to use them. We've been studying them, learning their tactics, making them confident. Now we show them what human deception really looks like. The human fleet struck like a hammer. Ships that had been playing dead suddenly appeared in perfect formation. Their movements coordinated with precision that spoke of endless drills and training. The Kravaks tried to respond, but their formation was scattered. Their ships separated by the weeks of ground campaign operations. The humans had waited for exactly this moment. When the enemy fleet was disorganized and psychologically shaken by the failure of their ground invasion. But it wasn't just the space battle that shocked the galaxy. On Earth's surface, human forces launched a coordinated counteroffensive that would be studied in military academies for generations. General Daehyun had absorbed the chemical weapons attack, grieved for the dead, and then activated battle plans that had been prepared for exactly this scenario. All units, execute Operation Hammer, Daehyun ordered. The Kravaks have shown us who they are. Now we show them who we are. Human forces emerged from positions the Kravaks had never detected. Underground bunkers opened, revealing artillery that had been hidden for weeks. Tank divisions that had been held in reserve roared forward, striking Kravaks positions that had been carefully mapped and targeted. Infantry units that had been conducting guerrilla operations suddenly coordinated into battalion-strength attacks. Hitting multiple objectives simultaneously, the Kravaks ground forces found themselves surrounded. Every escape route had been identified and blocked. Human forces didn't just attack, they systematically cut the enemy into isolated pockets, then destroyed each pocket methodically. The Kravaks soldiers, who had spent weeks unable to find and fight the humans, suddenly had more human forces than they could handle attacking from every direction. Sergeant Honnold led his unit in the urban battle for Seoul. The Krabs had occupied the central district, thinking they controlled the city. They didn't realize the entire district had been prepared as a killing ground. Move up to assault positions. Remember, we control the terrain. They're fighting in our city by our rules. His soldiers advanced through tunnels and underground passages, emerging inside buildings the Kravaks thought were secure. Room-clearing operations began, each one executed with the brutal efficiency of soldiers who had trained for years in urban combat. The Kravaks were larger, stronger, and better armed. But the humans knew the terrain, understood the angles, and most importantly, they were fighting for their homes in space. Major Yanhee commanded a Special Forces unit assigned a mission that would have seemed impossible a month ago. Her team was going to board and capture the Kravaks flagship. Not destroy it. Capture it. The Kravaks had murdered 40,000 civilians with chemical weapons. Humanity wanted their commander to face justice. Green light for boarding operation, came the order from Admiral Hyansik. Major, Your team is authorized to use any means necessary. Bring me that, Commander. Yanhi checked her weapons one final time. Her team consisted of 30 soldiers, each one a veteran of boarding operations against pirates and hostile ships, but they had never tried to take a ship this large, this well-defended. It didn't matter. The mission was clear. Listen up, she told her team over the comm channel. We're going in hard and fast. The Kryvax will have their entire crew fighting us. We're outnumbered 50 to 1. But we have two advantages. First, we've trained for boarding operations our entire careers. Second, we're really angry about what they did to Sol. Any questions? No one spoke. They knew the mission. They knew the risks. They knew that humanity was watching. The boarding pods launched from human ships, accelerating toward the Kryvax flagship at speeds that would have pulverized most species. The pods were designed for exactly this kind of assault. It's built to punch through ship holes and deliver soldiers directly into enemy vessels. They struck the flagship's hull in multiple locations, breaching the outer armor and spilling Yanni's team into the enemy ship. The fighting inside the Kryvax flagship was brutal and chaotic. The corridors were too small for proper firefights, forcing both sides into close-quarters combat. The Kryvax had size and strength advantages. The humans had training and tactics that the Kryvax had never encountered. Room-clearing procedures perfected over centuries of urban warfare translated directly to ship corridors. Flashbang grenades disoriented defenders. Precision shooting took down enemies before they could bring their weapons to bear. Yanhi moved through the ship with her team, methodically advancing toward the bridge. Every Kryvax soldier they encountered fought to the death, but the humans kept moving forward. 20 minutes after boarding, they reached the bridge. The door was sealed and heavily armored. Yanni's demolitions expert placed shape charges designed to cut through the hardened barrier, breaching in 3, 2, 1. The expert counted down. The charges detonated with a precision that spoke of years perfecting the technique. The door blew inward, and Yanni's team stormed the bridge. The Kryvax commander stood at the center of the room, surrounded by his bridge crew. He raised a weapon, but Yanhi was faster. Her shot took his gun arm, and he collapsed to the deck, wounded but alive. Target secure, Yanhi reported. We have the commander. The battle in space ended within hours. The Kryvax fleet, already disorganized and demoralized, collapsed completely when their flagship was captured. Human ships surrounded the remaining Kryvax vessels, giving them one chance to surrender. Most took it. The few that didn't were destroyed with efficiency that horrified the Council observers. The humans showed no mercy to ships that chose to keep fighting. On the ground, the Kryvax forces found themselves in an impossible situation. Cut off from their fleet, surrounded by human forces, they had two choices: surrender or die. Some chose to surrender. Many chose to die. The humans accommodated both choices with equal efficiency. Within 72 hours of the chemical weapons attack, not a single free Kryvax soldier remained on Earth. The council chamber watched in complete silence as the final Kryvax positions were overrun. Velthar's crystalline body had gone dark, all color drained from shock. Around the chamber, representatives from 47 species tried to process what they had witnessed. The Kryvax Empire, the most successful military power in council space, had been utterly destroyed by a species. The council had dismissed as primitive Ambassador Tae-1 appeared before the council one final time. His expression was grim, showing none of the satisfaction one might expect from a military victory. Honorable members of the council, Earth has a message for the Kryvax Empire. Their invasion fleet is destroyed. Their soldiers are dead or captured. Their commander is in our custody and will face trial for war crimes against civilian populations. He paused, letting that sink in. We are prepared to return their commander and surviving soldiers under one condition. The Kryvax Empire must surrender unconditionally. They must release all occupied territories. They must pay reparations for damages. They must allow human observers to oversee their government and ensure they never again threaten another species. If they refuse these terms, we will bring war to their homeworld. and we will show them what total war means when waged by a species that has spent 10,000 years perfecting it. A council member, one who had argued most strongly against helping Earth, spoke up. Ambassador, you must understand the implications of what you're proposing. You're threatening to invade the Kravax Empire. They have hundreds of worlds, trillions of citizens, fleets scattered across dozens of systems. Even after this defeat, they outnumber you 1,000 to 1.